Welcome back. Our guest in this segment is John Farquharson, and John, we're going to be talking about the thing we always talk about, which is sewage treatment.
Right.
It's of phenomenal importance because we're looking at $1 billion, and we've got to make sure that we get, I think, the best possible deal price-wise, but even more important to me is the best environmental deal. So maybe you can just tell us what's going on, because I think most people don't know.
Well, welcome to the club in the sense of not knowing what's going on. As best I can tell, there's a March of 2016 deadline for this $83 million that is attached to a 3P Canada fund. The federal government has given them about $250 million, as has the province. But apparently all of those deals, the money doesn't come until the plant is built. But this one apparently that's due March 31st is signed, and it's already been delayed 1 year. We're supposed to have had a plan in place a year ago. So now this March 31st deadline seems to be driving everything, and come heck or high water, they're going to have a plan in place, signed off by March 31st.
In order to get $83 million from Canada.
In $83 million.
Now, does that mean that what we end up with is going to be in some way a P3? Because I haven't really heard that before.
I mean, the difficulty is finding out, what exactly, how they're going to fully cost, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, various options.
But if we're getting money from P3 Canada, is it going to be a P3 in some way, or do you know?
Well, in terms of the 3P puzzle, if you will, the new ministers in the Prime Minister's new cabinet recently got what they call mandate letters. And basically they tell, the Prime Minister tells the minister, said, here's your mission for the next, 3 or 4 years, right? This is your mandate, okay? And it was really quite interesting because one of the mandate letters that went to the Minister of Infrastructure talked about removing the P3 screen for infrastructure projects.
Wow, that's huge. That's great.
Well,
before, everything that was going to be getting money from the federal government had to be at least considered for a P3.
It had to go through the 3P screen.
Right, now they're saying goodbye to that.
Well, that's what it says in the mandate letter. Changes to speed up applications to the Building Canada Fund, including, quote, removing the P3 screen for projects. But more interesting for me is a line from the Environment and Climate Change Minister's letter, which talks about treating our fresh water as a precious resource and making investments in the best wastewater treatment technologies available, end quote. Okay, so the one that went to another minister, I think Minister of Oceans and whatever else, choose the best technologies available to reduce environmental impacts. So I'm hard-pressed to see how you're going to go forward and to the federal government with a centralized secondary, which certainly doesn't meet these very high environmental standards, on the excuse that you're trying to meet a 3P funding deadline for March 31st when they're possibly going to take the P3 screen off the table. So I don't understand how that's going to all unfold, personally. I don't see it making much sense.
Wow, I mean, to me that is fundamentally important, because once again, people laugh when I say we're being rushed through a process because, hey, it's already taken 10 years, we've gotten nowhere. But that's not our fault.
No.
That's the fault of the people who were trying to give us $1 billion project that did no environmental good. So the people of the city managed to stop that. And now we're trying to, I think people want to start from scratch and get the system that makes sense and gives us a good price as well. And, you keep hearing, well, yeah, we've taken so long already. But again, that's not our fault. Here we are. Let's make sure we do the right things. But as you told me earlier, things are actually moving ahead quite quickly, and maybe you can just give us the timeline.
Well, like I say, those are the timelines, right? They're going to have supposedly all of the options costed to the point where they can then engage the public, and the public can then make, I guess, informed decisions.
So you told me December 5th was something.
That's the date right now for all these costed options.
So
With an engagement process to follow, you know, on December 6th, so that people can begin to find out about these various fully costed options. But in terms of the level of being fully costed, like for me, a fully costed option, for example, would be a completely, you know, tertiary-based system, and it would be costed over the full life cycle of the project. That's 50 years. And all of the revenue streams would also be costed. So that means that all of the resource recovery that's going to be associated with a tertiary system would have to be, like I say, fully costed 50 years out. That's hard to do, and that's very time consuming.
Well, it's impossible to do. You can't.
Well, I mean, with any
we don't
degree.
even know if there's going to be a planet in 50 years going
Good
the
point.
way things are going.
But there are, you know, there is a, you know,
Yeah.
there are methods for doing it. For example, you know, there are some private sector players who will say, hey, you give us the contract for this particular resource for the next 40 years or whatever, and we're willing to take the risk, okay, and that it will, you know, make us some money, make us a profit. But there's a risk there. And then questions arise such as, well, if the private sector is willing to take a risk on a resource or the you know, the worth of that resource 20, 30 years out, then, you know, let them have it. It takes it off our plate. So my point is that the costing, I think, for the public to make informed decisions, I just can't see how they're going to prepare it based on what they've come to the table with as recently as, you know, like a month ago. So it's disconcerting. But here's this wonderful opportunity from the new federal government. You know, as I just read some quotes from the various mandate letters, I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, I don't know why.
Great opportunity to,
you know, say, okay, that's great. If you're insisting that we have, you know, the highest, the best wastewater technologies available, we're going to need a little bit more time.
to look at them. Are we looking at them
To
now?
cost them. Well, you know, I was on a while ago and they were sort of looking at them. They had these, you know, sort of a show and tell with some private sector vendors about 3 weeks ago down at the CRD. But it was pretty high level. Like these guys had a PowerPoint, 20 slides. But in terms of detailed costing and analysis, not even begun to scratch the surface. So again, how they're going to provide this to a public and ask them to make informed, you know, fully informed decisions without this level of costing, I just don't see how it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, my own feeling is that the public isn't really wanted in this process, although we've been told that we're the most important part of the process, because I participated in the first part of the process.
Yeah, but there's two questions. They want the public, but they don't want, I don't think they want a fully informed public.
Yes.
They want the public to come in, give them a, you know, minimal amount of information. You were at some of the, you know, the site selection option, you know, meetings, workshops, that sort of thing. You know, the amount of information that you had about a particular site was laughable.
Yes.
And so, but what happened is that then the public chose, and so then the powers that be can say, hey, they chose these
And
options.
we didn't really even choose. I mean, I was at the meetings. We didn't really choose, but we were later told that we had made choices.
Oh, that's a surprise to me.
Yeah. So you've been in, I mean, you've been...
Spending way too long in this file.
Yes, yes, for a long time. So have you, I mean, from what you've seen put forward in terms of technologies, are there some that seem to be reasonably cheap, give us a good tertiary system, and are better than the secondary system that the CRD still seems to be putting forward as the best choice?
Well, you know, the one that I've, you know, read the most about and seemed most impressed by is certainly the tertiary level treatment, but not just partial tertiary, you know, tertiary, you know, throughout the whole system. And then you can, put the water. You don't have to build, new outfalls for the near potable water. You can put the water into inbound waterways. But then there's another issue with that, and that's the fact that a lot of the technologies, the more advanced technologies, they're 20 years ahead of the regulations. For example, as far as I know, dockside green cranks out tertiary level water through these membranes, right? But the regulations apparently read that to test the effluent has to be tested where it eventually ends up in the ocean, as opposed to when it comes out of the plant. Because when the water comes out of the plant at Dockside Green, it goes into these ponds where the otters poop, and the ducks poop, and the geese poop. So it goes through there, and then I think it eventually ends up in the Selkirk waterway. So that's where the testing is done, in the Selkirk waterway. After this near potable water, and you've maybe seen some people on TV doing a demonstration drinking of the water. So they test it. But the thing is, so those regulations were put in place, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, before this technology was available.
Okay, do you think there's a chance that we are going to end up with something that is far less good than what we could have?
Well, we're going to find out probably the week after, next, at the next Core Area Liquid Waste Management Review, or whatever it's called, the Sewage Committee, because Director Vic Derman has once again got a motion before the core area, before that committee, that calls for a fully and independent evaluation of the viability of integrated waste approaches and other innovative solution sets in a manner that does not compromise the interest of the applicants. So basically asking for a really thorough look at what's out there in the private sector. So we'll see how that vote goes.
What do you think? So this is a very important vote. So Vic Derman is asking to open the process up once again.
Well,
really take a look at what's out there.
Have meaningful engagement of the private sector, like meaningful, not just a 20-minute PowerPoint, but significant, in-depth engagement.
When is that meeting going to happen?
This motion goes before that sewage committee, I think next Wednesday.
So that's November, today's the 17th, 24th, 25th.
Yeah, 25th, 26th.
Okay, so everybody, there's something that we should all be keeping our eyes on.
Very important motion.
Yeah, a very important motion put forward by Vic Derman to take a look at what's available. We cannot afford to make a mistake, and there seem to be some pretty powerful forces moving us towards a mistake. John, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.